Good evening, welcome. We've got no sound out here, so I didn't really know that we're on air other than I just saw my picture, but just to put you at ease. It is the 29th of October, it's Wednesday evening, we are live on Genesis TV. And if you're watching this in a repeat, you may see us on other channels. We just thank God that we have the opportunity of coming to you at such an interesting time in mankind's history. The world's crashing as far as the finances are concerned. It goes up and down on the stock market. Maybe that's going with your heartbeat and your heart rate, but don't worry, don't panic. Jesus said not to worry about the things of this world because they are passing away. But he or she who does the will of God remains forever. That's really reassuring when you're thinking, well, hang on a sec, am I going to have a job next week? Or I've already just lost my job. Apparently 20 million across the world. Their workforce will be diminished by that number because of the current economic crisis. The world governments, they don't know the answers. They get together, they huddle together, they even explode together in a sense of trying to find an answer to the problems. But as soon as they sort of sort out one, it leads to another problem. They fix this here and they fix it there, but there's no answers that they really have full control of. So what do we do? Well, we've got guests that are coming on the programme from time to time, some of them very, very interesting. And tonight's guest is Dr. Richard Kent from Final Frontiers. Welcome to the programme, Dr. Richard.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Now, tonight, you are going to be talking about money and finances, funnily enough.
Absolutely,
so,
yes.
You have an incredible testimony, and we'd like to hear about that as well, with regards to not near-death experiences, but a different one tonight on how God provides even without asking or without trying.
That's right. Yeah, well, we do. Yeah, we prove God in the area of finance.
Yeah.
But his name is Jehovah Jireh,
which means
God provides.
Is not the Jireh, is it, that like you get from social services if you're out of a job? That's the wrong spelling. Sorry.
Jehovah Jireh is God provides. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're joint heirs with Christ. And the first thing we need to know, all of us, is we're multi-millionaires. Now, I'm not a multi-millionaire, actually, in the bank. But as far as God is concerned, we're joint heirs with Christ. And Jesus made everything. And he owns everything. And we're joint heirs with him. So, in the New Testament, which is his will, we're joint heirs with Christ. So
that's a good point. But in reality, there are many Christians across the world. In fact, I was looking up the numbers the other day. It's incredible. There's a third of the world's population are Christians. But I wouldn't say that they all feel as if they're millionaires. And some of them do live in dire straits. And
I would dispute that figure, actually. Well, let's look at United Kingdom. To be a true follower of Jesus, you've got to be a born-again Christian, right? I don't think it's a third of the United Kingdom are born-again Christians.
Well, I was looking, if you believe the stats that you get out there, I was looking on the internet and it said, this was in the year 2000, they said 32%, but of the world's population.
Only God knows.
You got an incredible amount of believers, believe it or not, in China alone.
Yeah.
So we're not supposed to say that, of course, on air, because they're under tremendous persecution. Sure. We might not have that many proportionately in the United Kingdom, because we could see from the state of our broadcasting networks, especially the BBC, we do have presenters that are sort of lowered the baseline somewhat, and have sort of fed into our society a base mentality of that we see through the recent news of Brandon Russ, wherever his name is. But so we've got to come back into the world in a way that we can relate to them, and finances is one way we can. Now, what have you got to offer our viewers tonight, who perhaps are just switching channels and thinking, well, Christianity is a bit of a joke. Let's have a look what's on Genesis tonight.
Well, first of all, I've got a testimony. I mean, I was a GP, and you probably know, but because I was on the programme a while ago, I've interviewed over 300 people who've died and met Jesus Christ and have been to heaven or hell. That made a big difference. So for a whole lot of reasons, I left general practice, and that was 11 years ago. And because I retired earlier, because I retired when I was 50, my income went down by 80%. That's a big drop. And actually, my monthly income was less than my monthly outgoings in terms of my mortgage.
Well, that's about everybody these days.
Well, no, not quite. No,
not quite.
I mean, our monthly income was less than the mortgage. we were about 260,000 in debt. So we prayed about it, and we've been Christians. I've been a believer since 1974, and we prayed about it, my wife and I. And we said, well, we laid out the bank statements and said, come on, God, what are you going to do about this? Do you know, he didn't say a thing. He said, but what he did impress upon us was to set up a charity. It's called the Final Frontier Charitable Trust, and to travel around the world, basically doing evangelism, but giving away all our materials free. So we've actually travelled to 26 countries now. And we travel around and we give away all our materials. We travel free. We stay locally, or either with the pastor or whatever. We also provide money for orphanages and vehicles if necessary, all sorts of things like that. But, you know, within 9 months, all that 260,000 was paid off from different sources, 7 different sources. It was all paid off. And we just kept going. Our income's gone up, and there's no problem. So we've just carried on. Now, Jesus, actually, he was a giver. He was a tremendous... He didn't just... I mean, he died and gave his life so that we could go to heaven. But during his earthly ministry, he was a tremendous giver. Tremendous giver. I mean, he had...
some examples.
Well, he had a treasury. And every night, Judas Iscariot would get up and give money to the poor. Every single night. And large sums. I mean, it doesn't say this in the scripture, but I believe the real reason that so many crowds follow Jesus were 3 reasons. But I think the first 2, because human nature is very predictable, is that Jesus was healing the sick and giving away large sums of money.
You think he was actually doing that? Well, why didn't he demonstrate that, say, at the time of the Mount of Beatitudes, when he was feeding the 5,000 plus?
Well, he did demonstrate that.
He did it in a different way. He didn't use finances.
He
didn't send him to the local shop, go and buy 20,000 loaves of bread.
Well, let's talk about that. That's in Mark chapter 6. Let's talk about that particular one. Mark chapter 6 is very interesting, that, because it was the end of the day, and the disciples said to Jesus, Jesus, Master, he said, the people are tired, send them into the villages. They can go and buy food for themselves and drink as well, because they're thirsty. And Jesus said, no, you feed them. And they said, Master, shall we spend 200 denarii on feeding this crowd? That was a financial question. Now remember, a denarius is a day's wage.
That's right.
200
days money, yeah.
What they were saying is, shall we spend 8 months' wages on feeding this crowd? Now, put it in modern day terms. Now, this is Surbiton, and the local income, let's say it's about 24,000 for an average income in Surbiton.
I was going to say 25, but I mean, yes.
Well, let's say 24, because the numbers
divide.
The numbers work. You see, the disciples were saying to Jesus, Master, shall we spend £16,000 on feeding this crowd?
For one meal.
For one meal. And by the way, there wasn't an exclamation mark. It was just a simple financial question. Master, before we go and spend £16,000, are you happy with that?
Yeah. Can we write it off in the books?
Now, we can just talk a little bit more about that, actually, because it's very interesting, because human nature is predictable. Now, you know what Peter was like? he was what I call a fire-point aim guy. He was,
wasn't he? A son of thunder.
He was a son of thunder. So, you know, if that was all the money in the kitty, he would have said, hang on, chaps, I just want to make sure, Jesus, we'll give it away, but there's £16,000 we're about to give away. Do you realise we're about to give away all the money in the kitty? Yeah. But he didn't. He was relaxed about it. Now, why was he relaxed? Because Jesus did it all the time. I think it probably represented only about 10% of the money in the kitty. It does say, I was just trying to find the actual reference, but it does say to tithe every 3 days. We're used to tithing on an annual basis, but Jesus tithed every 3 days.
How do you know that?
It's actually in the scriptures. I was just trying to find the actual verse.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So it says to give offerings on the other days, but to tithe every 3 days.
Gosh, that would upset a lot of people today, wouldn't it?
Well,
it's all relative anyway.
They were used to Jesus giving away huge sums of money. And so they were fairly laid back about this. They just wanted to check about it. So for that reason, I believe there was at least 100